Aloha, everyone. Hello, my name is Anderson Lay. I'm the Artistic Director for the Hawaii International Film Festival. And this is our first high film industry panel of 2024. And high film is basically the industry component of HIF, where we focus on the local film industry here, um, not only for filmmakers and crew, but also anything that deals with filmmaking and really focusing on more sustainable workplace development, sustainable workplace development, and things you can do as a filmmaker, but also as a filmmaking entrepreneur here in Hawaii. As the industry grows here and becomes more sustainable. I mean, aside from being Hollywood's tropical backlot, we really are focusing on and investing in authentic storytelling here in Hawaii, not only for local filmmakers, but also especially Kanaka Maoli filmmakers, Native Hawaiian filmmakers. And that's what we do here at HIF as part of our, the many things we do at the festival. So I would like to talk about basically this today's panel, which is going to be about, we're going to have a great conversation about the importance of and the rise of the impact producer. What is an impact producer? Especially in documentaries, a specialist who creates and manages social action campaigns and are responsible for designing and implementing strategic impact and education strategies about social impact documentaries. Storytelling has intrinsic properties, but what do you do with that story is everything. Today, documentary filmmakers are reaching beyond the offer of traditional distribution on television or in cinemas to think about impact, outreach, and engagement campaigns. These are all words used today to describe the plans a film team puts in place to ensure that their film spurs change on an issue, where they are deliberate about who needs to see a film, what audiences need to do, and what partnerships, tools, and resources are needed to reach the desired goals of the campaign. And so for today's discussion, I welcome three filmmakers who have worn many hats behind the camera, from director to impact producer, as they discuss the importance and necessity of impact producing to amplify and bring awareness in their various film projects. So first of all, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Laurel Tamayo. Laurel, aloha.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Laura is passionate about communicating the climate crisis through film and TV. She's a co-producer and impact producer for Gen Z Mental Health Climate Stories, which we showed at last year's festival, and was nominated for the Deep Blue Environmental Shorts Award at HIF. She was also an impact producer for I Am Greta, awarded the Best Impact Campaign at Jackson Wild, inspiring audiences to take action on climate change. She also worked on the Hollywood Climate Summit, an annual gathering of the entertainment industry to address climate change, and the Good Energy Playbook, a guide for screenwriters on how they can weave climate change into their films and TV shows. She was recognized in Forbes 68 Climate Leaders Changing the Film and TV Industry, and she is currently in the Harvard Executive Education Program, where she was awarded the Bacon Climate Leadership Scholarship. Currently, she is working on a new short documentary called Healing Lahaina, which I believe you're shooting right now. Thank you for being here, Laurel. My next guest is Leah Warshawski. Hi, Leah.
Hey
How
there.
are you?
I'm great.
Great. Leah specializes in producing, directing documentary features, television shows, commercials, corporate, nonprofit, and branded content around the globe. In high school, Leah was voted most likely to save the world, and her career in the film industry started in Hawaii, working in the Marine Department for shows including Lost and Baywatch. Currently based on Maui, Leah has a BA in Japanese language from the University of Hawaii at Manoa and has earned multiple social impact certificates from UPenn. And her latest film, Uncle Bully's Surf School, world premiered at last year's festival as well and won the Audience Award for Best Documentary. So thanks for being here,
Yeah,
Leah.
thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And finally, our next panelist is Megan Welsh. Hi, Megan.
Hello.
Megan is a creative projects manager passionate about finding unique ways to connect us, shape our understanding of the world, and inspire movement towards a more sustainable future. She has spent the last 15 years working at the intersections of storytelling, impact, and technology with a variety of experiences, including impact producer for Netflix films, Chasing Coral, The Game Changers, and The Social Dilemma, and program manager for Tug, Inc., the crowdsourcing platform for community screenings. Megan currently serves as program manager on the public space incubator at New Public, working collaboratively with public service media broadcasters to reimagine digital conversation spaces, but built around content. And also, oh, Megan, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having
And
me.
this is how it's going to play out. We're going to have a great conversation about the role of and the rise of the impact producer. And like for audiences who are viewing right now, you can ask questions for our esteemed panelists. And by doing that, you just basically, if you're watching it on Facebook Live or on YouTube, you can just type in your comments, your questions in the comment section, and we'll gather. Our team will gather them up, and in the last 15 minutes of the panel, we'll start answering them. Okay, pretty simple. Great. So, this is the icebreaker question. How did you start? I mean, I mentioned it in the various bios, but how did you start in your filmmaking career? And maybe I'll just start with Leah.
Well, I actually started working in the film industry when I was going to UH on Oahu. So I was working on a boat on the west side and ended up meeting a bunch of people who were in the film industry, met the Marine coordinator at the time for Baywatch and some other films. And so he needed an assistant, and I started working on those kinds of shows, like way back when Lost was filming on Oahu, and the show called Hawaii, a bunch of other movies, and Baywatch, of course. And then, started there working on the water, helping manage the crew on the water, finding boats, finding locations, and then just did as many different jobs as I could. Ended up joining IATSE 665. So we started the Marine Department at that time. So that was quite a while ago. And, I knew at that time I had a sense that I wanted to be a producer. And in order to be a producer, I felt like I should know a little bit about a lot of things. And so I just started working in different departments, moved to the mainland, and eventually ended up back on Maui about 5 or 6 years ago.
Pretty cool. How about Lori? Next, pass the popcorn to Laurel.
Yeah, it was kind of accidental how I got into filmmaking. A classmate actually in high school was transferring schools, and they were working as a student producer, and they're like, oh, they need to fill my position. Would you want to be a student producer in the video production department? And I was like, sure, like I'd like to make some money. So I interviewed and I got it. And I was a very shy kid at the time, but this job, you had to think of ideas of videos you can make about some story happening at the school. You had to call that person up, interview them on your own, edit it on your own. And so it really pushed me out of my comfort zone, and I really enjoyed telling stories. And so that's kind of how I got into it. And then my senior year of high school, I had taken AP Environmental Science, and we were watching a documentary called Racing Extinction, which basically showed the connection between humans and how they're impacting species around the world and causing them to become endangered and extinct. And so we watched that, and there was one specific scene where there was a bird on Kauai called the o'o, and there was a man who recorded these bird calls, and he said, this is a mating call, but it's one that will never be answered because he's the last of his species. And I remember just thinking like, oh my gosh, I've lived in Hawaii my whole life. How come I never heard of this bird? How come no one did anything about it? And so that documentary alone made me just like do a bunch of research about environmental issues, climate change, and all of that. And that's what caused me to major in environmental science and minor in documentary film in college.
Cool. How about you, Megan?
Well, I have been a lover of film my whole life, but my background actually, what I studied in school was art, and I decided I wanted to dip my toes into the film world, and my first unpaid internship turned into a full-time job eventually, and I was working for a tech platform that focused on festival scheduling. And from that, I went to another tech platform that was focused on crowdsourcing for movie screenings. And that's really kind of how I became immersed in the world of community-led screenings. That led me to my next role, working on Chasing Coral as an impact producer and leading their community screenings program.
Very cool. And then, just were you, I mean, before you ventured off into your filmmaking career, and this is this is a question for everyone. It seems that you were also, very outdoorsy. You love going to the beach or or whatnot. Were you always concerned or always out there when it comes to, just being outside, being an outside person, being outdoorsy person, or being concerned about the environment?
Go ahead, Laurel.
It's really funny because,
no.
I was born and raised on Oahu, and actually, my family wasn't an outdoorsy family. It really wasn't until I was in college and made friends that liked camping, going hiking, that I really started to enjoy the outdoors. And once I was studying it, so it's kind of backwards compared to probably most people. Is I started studying it, and I saw that one documentary really made a difference, and then that helped me enjoy the outdoors more.
I think that's a little bit similar to me too. I mean, I grew up in cities, and my dad actually wrote a book about how to raise money for film that's, in this documentary world. And he always told me, never be a documentary filmmaker, if nothing else. It's not, you should never do that. And so I went to college. I studied Japanese at UH, and I didn't study filmmaking. I just ended up working on a boat in college. And that was really transformational for me, being outside every day, starting to care more about whales and dolphins and turtles and the ocean and ocean conservation. And so that was turnkey for me. But before I was going to UH, I was in cities in the middle of the mainland and really not as outdoorsy as I wanted to be. So living in Hawaii changed everything for me. How about you, Megan?
Yeah, I would say that I have always loved being outside. My earliest memories as a kid is playing outside until late hours of the night when I was called in. But I actually had very little experience with the ocean. I grew up going to South Carolina, and that was about the only beach that I'd seen most of my life until working on Chasing Coral. So that really, changed my life in a million ways, but opened me up to kind of a whole new world of ocean conservation. I think what drew me to the impact world was after the 2016 election. I was feeling like I really wanted to, be a part of creating change and thinking about how to use the skill sets that I had to do that. And my skill sets were around bringing people together around film. So that's what led me to that project.
And this is a great segue to, again, Megan, you talked about you working on, just those, the platform Tug, right? TUGG. And
Yes.
I've been to several Tug screenings, and
awesome.
So,
it's not around anymore, but
not around anymore.
Cool
But
to
it's at the time, it's the world's constantly changing, especially in independent filmmaking, right? So, and distribution especially. But working in that space, Megan, with Tug and other kind of basically online platforms to crowdsource and crowdfund or whatever, just crowd whatever, right? And then that was kind of those are kind of the antecedents in a way to the role of an impact producer, right? So maybe, and this is almost it's like it's like you said, Tug is no longer around, but like all social media platforms, whatever, it's always constantly changing. So can you talk about maybe you talked about just maybe Chasing Coral was really kind of your first foray into the impact producing part. You were in distribution, and you're going, and then you're crossing over to the actual marketing or distribution, or just basically the campaign for an actual film, right? So can you talk about maybe just Chasing Coral as a case study, and then how you kind of came up? And I'm sure as the impact producer, I'm sure you wore many hats, but especially as working on that film.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, my introduction to impact producing was through Tug. That was, I was working closely with other impact producers who were using that as that platform as a way to bring people together around social issues. And so I was bringing a lot of my experience that I learned from other people in the industry to working on this film. And my focus for Chasing Coral was I was brought on to build and manage their community screenings program. So by the time that they were building an impact team, they had actually already premiered the film at Sundance. It had won the audience award. It had distribution locked in, and they were looking to build a team to essentially kind of lay the groundwork for leading up to the release, which would be happening later in the summer. So a lot of my work in the early days focused around, really trying to organize the communities that we'd heard from already. There was a lot of press about the film. So that was, quite a privilege with Chasing Coral, that there was a lot of interest already in the film. And so we had to figure out what to do with it. So like some of my early days were literally reading thousands of emails and organizing those and sorting them into like, this is somebody who should host a screening. This is someone who should attend a screening. We need to make sure we notify them when we have one. This is somebody interested in donating. And by going through that process, we were able to also organize a lot of events to happen kind of on the release date of the film. Because one of the stipulations for the distribution agreement with Netflix was that we couldn't have any screenings happening before it was released on the platform. Right. So we used those few months leading up to the release to really focus on, engaging people to host like watch parties on that date, working with festivals to organize screenings that were happening after that date. HIF was one of them. Mm-hmm. And then, after the film was released and we'd laid a lot of that groundwork to allow people to then start hosting their own events, our team kind of shifted focus into running our own local campaigns.
Right. Anything to help to get awareness to the film after it was it purchased at Sundance, or was the distribution already set in place before the world premiere?
It was the world premiere at Sundance, and it was purchased there. Okay. And one other thing to note too is that the filmmakers, they were impact focused from the beginning. So they had an impact producer on in the early days of pre-production, and then by the time they were going to Sundance, they brought on a full-time director of impact. Who was there to kind of support some of those distribution discussions that were centered around impact, and then also to focus on building out the team that I was eventually brought on to be a part of.
Okay, cool. And then maybe, and Laurel, you kind of, again, I like Megan, just kind of slipped into kind of the impact producing in a way. You weren't, like you said earlier, you weren't necessarily outdoorsy person when you were young, but talk about kind of like how, your foray into it, especially helping organize the Hollywood Climate Summit. So what is that?
Yeah, so I first got into impact producing because I met a woman at a film festival who was an impact producer, and it's such a niche job. I had never heard of it before and never talked about it in film school. And she basically told me, oh, you strategize. Usually an impact producer comes on after a film is done. They strategize how to use the film's message to create real, like measurable change. And so, using panels, making resources, like social media, getting the right partners and getting the right people to see it. And so I was really fascinated by that world. And when I looked up impact producing internship when I was in college, I couldn't find anything. And so I just started reaching out to people on LinkedIn that I didn't know that were impact producers, including Megan. And so people I realized in this industry are very giving of their time and advice and everything. And so I was very grateful to get actually all of my jobs from code calls like that. And so I became an impact producer on the film I'm Greta. And then at that same job at Impact, I also worked on the Hollywood Climate Summit. And so the Hollywood Climate Summit is an annual gathering of the entertainment industry to address climate change. I think it's on its 4th or 5th year this year. And basically, there's just a bunch of workshops that people can attend that have to do with sustainable production or putting sustainability on screen or impact producing or using social media to create behavior change or things like that. Yeah, so that's kind of what I did there.
Hey. And then with Leah, I mean, I know you as a a filmmaker, right? So I've shown your films at HIF, and of course, like we world premiered, Uncle Bully's Surf School. I think I'm going to just explain it in a nutshell, really quickly, how you produced this film, and the main subject was Bully Cotter from Lahaina, who started had a surf school, basically giving surf lessons, and that was his bread and butter. Lahaina town was like kind of a very tourist destination, aside from it being his one of the former capital of Hawaii and whatnot. But like it's like, and then you were capturing basically his story, of the challenges of just basically being a just to survive during a pandemic when there was like tourism was completely kaput, right? So and then you showed them, you submitted the film. I was like, oh great, well let's show it. I invited the film, and then obviously the tragedy happened, and then I checked in on you. Everything was okay. Are you okay?
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And then so you said everything, like you were kind of reassessing, reaching out to all your family and community and whatnot, and also the subjects in the film. And then you were like just driven. You and your team were like, okay, we got to pick up our cameras and then like capture what is happening now, because it's obviously the film's obviously changed. You had to add this coda to this crazy tragic event. So with Uncle Bully's first surf school, I mean, like obviously it changed a lot when it comes to kind of the timeline and the production and whatnot. So can you talk about kind of what you're doing aside from finishing the film for HIF, and that's reassessing what we want to do, but also bringing on the impact, really kind of implementing an impact producer kind of like strategy to your film?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a special case. we've never been in this position before with any other film. We did finish it. It was 29 minutes last February. It fits, as you know, very nicely into a nice festival box as a short at 29 minutes. But then the Lahaina fires happened and changed everything. They burned down the entire town. Almost everybody in our film lost their home, lost their business. And so we couldn't, we just felt like it was the right thing to do. We couldn't not do it. And so we ended up finishing the film twice. We had to go back and do color, audio, make more DCPs. And we actually still haven't paid for that, but we just did it because it was the right thing to do. But that also meant that, now our film's 40 minutes and it's 39 minutes. So it doesn't fit into that nice festival slot anymore. For most festivals, not every festivals. I mean, HIF is a special case, and there are a handful of others who we're working with who are great, who get it. But not everybody gets it, and more festivals are just looking for that perfect programming time slot. So we're in a strange space with festivals and that kind of distribution. But from the impact side, we knew and still feel like this film really needs to be seen in a theater with an audience. That's where the healing happens. That's where it starts. That's where the conversation starts. And so we're spending a lot of energy to create and eventize all of our screenings and show up wherever we can. So we just dove in head first. I mean, with everything that's happening, it's definitely making the funding landscape really difficult. So there's a lot of people who need help. There's a lot of relief and recovery for a very long time that's going to be happening on Maui. And we're making a film, and we need to travel with the film, and we need to screen the film. And so the impact that this film has is going way beyond Hawaii, and that's kind of our goal, because we want to keep Maui and Lahaina in people's minds, and we need to do that on the mainland. But in order to do that on the mainland, we need sponsors and partners and funding to get there. So it's challenging in a whole new arena on many, many levels. And right now, because we don't have funding, I'm the only impact producer. We have a small team actually, but the team who is volunteering at HIF can only volunteer for so long. So until we have funding, I'm doing all of it.
Yeah. I mean,
So yeah.
you're still, I mean, you're still in your festival run, right? So coming along.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
just, I mean, and again, you know, with you know what happened in Lahaina, and you know, and it totally changed the film, and you're just making, and not making stuff up, but you're doing stuff on the fly. There was no
Absolutely.
strategy to
Oh
doing that.
yeah.
So like, it's like, you know, and like, so exactly, so you know, like now it's, what are you, I mean, let's just talk about just the film itself and then the impact producing part. So like, you're in your middle of your festival run. How are you kind of like just using the festival kind of like run as a means to promote the film, but also how can you implement the impact producing, and what is the, obviously the end goal is to get it bought, you know, or you know, get distribution.
Yeah, it's different. You know, I work a lot of times, I consult with filmmakers about distribution and festival strategy and all of this. And so now I'm, kind of making a new path and having to pivot quite a bit with this film. But festivals for us, yes, it's a great way to get the film seen by an audience. But the festival world has changed a lot. You know this better than anybody. And for us, it's really important that we're there to represent the film and that we're able to eventize it if we are going to go to a festival. So we're really being, we're choosing carefully. We're not going to every festival that we get into. And some of the festivals even have told us that they won't show the 40-minute version. They can only show the 30-minute because of their time slot. And so we've pulled it from a couple festivals because we don't believe in that. So we're literally negotiating every single festival who says, let's do this. We're interested in saying, okay, well, can we do opening night? Can we do closing night? Can we do a fundraiser around this? Can we do a community impact event while we're there? And so we're being a little bit more choosy. And we're also windowing this longer at festivals and for community screenings and in-person events before we go digital. So we, again, because we feel strong about people seeing this in person, because we want Bully and Ashley to be at as many screenings as possible, and because we feel like our audience needs in-person healing. We feel like we can see the impact, we can measure the impact, and we know we're having an impact when we show up and when people watch this film together and talk about it. Once you're watching it at home on a phone, it's an entirely different experience. And I think, you know, a big reason why we make films is because technically, you know, we want to see that art we want to see our work in a theater. It's really important to us. And so we're kind of, with those goals in mind, we are making this up as we go and changing it. And kind of, we know where true north is. And we're hoping that by showing up, people get involved. We're hoping that by showing up, partners and sponsors say, how can I help? That's the ultimate goal. We need someone to say, how can I help? And then, of course, we have a myriad of ways you can do that. But it's different. It's going really well. It's really meaningful. Like, we just had an impact event on Oahu at the surf park. We partnered with a local nonprofit who is working with kids who are in grief and trauma counseling. And Bully came over and spent a morning at that wave with them. We did a screening 2 nights before. And so things like that are like, that's the holy grail for us. That's what we want to do more of. And so I am reaching out and creating more of those kinds of events this year. And then we'll see.
yeah. Because I mean, you're also, I mean, aside from, you know, always having these festival screenings, you know, and being very not deliberate, but like, you know, just very
intentional.
Intentional. Thank you.
Yeah.
Intentional. I'm like, what's the right festival for you, for the film ultimately, right?
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, that's very, I mean, especially choosing festivals that are, you know, maybe have, I would say, you know, maybe if they're like festivals that have an environmental theme or maybe an outdoor theme or anything like
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
With more like-minded audiences, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I have to say a big thank you to you and your team again, because, I've said this before, but like, you guys were the only ones who called us after the fires, and we submitted to more than 50 film festivals. So you were the only ones who called and asked how we were doing and said, how can we help? And, our premiere on Oahu was so epic. And we were just watching footage again last night because we're editing an impact trailer to pitch. And it was just such an awesome experience for everyone. So thank you for being kind and compassionate. We need more of you.
No, I mean, ultimately, aside from, it's a great film. So that's that's first and foremost, right? When we're programming and whatnot. So, but Megan, you talked about earlier, like how you came in kind of not fairly late, but like after the Sundance premiere of Chasing Coral, right? So, can you talk about maybe some, you coming on board on another project, maybe earlier on, or maybe is it The Social Dilemma? Maybe we can talk about that, or or it doesn't have to be that, or maybe another film project that you worked on that you came on early.
Game Changers had a slightly different model, so maybe that one. I worked on Game Changers in a similar capacity. So I was brought on to help support their community screenings.
That's the one executive produced by James Cameron?
Yeah.
Okay, that one, yeah. Maybe just give a quick log line of Game Changers.
Game Changers is a documentary about how plant-based diets can positively impact fitness.
Got it.
And it's made by the same filmmaker, actually, that made Racing Extinction that Laurel mentioned as well.
Got it.
And so they had decided to self-distribute originally and had chosen to do a route of working with Fathom. So doing one-day only movie screenings. They had a really large theatrical release that was in, I think, 4 different countries. And so when I was brought on, it was to kind of help them get set up for what that release was going to look like, what it meant for, like, for instance, preparing their website for traffic for people wanting to host screenings, thinking about the screenings that were set up, how we can engage like champions of those screenings to help bring in fitness groups. So I was doing a lot of outreach to fitness groups and creating promoter toolkits, things that would support people in making these events. Leah used the term eventize them. So helping people to turn them into more than just like getting a group to go see a film together, but to actually discuss it together afterwards, to bring in specialists who could be there for a panel after the screening. So that was a lot of the work that happened with that film. And then eventually later on, it did end up being released on Netflix. But that was probably like a year or so later. Most of their screenings were happening as community screenings before that.
I mean, that's very specific, maybe this is kind of great. Like, you're looking at like plant-based diet, like you're looking at the health industry, you're looking at, not only fitness, I mean, the fitness world, but also social media. There's lots of fitness like influencers, right? And plant-based, look, I'm on Instagram a lot, looking at, recipes and whatnot. And like, I'm looking at, like I'm trying to get healthier. So like, I'm told to like eat like, a pound of ground beef every morning with avocado. Get my macros in. But that's beside the point. Like, I'm not Andrew Huberman pilled yet. But let's just talk about, specifically, with the Game Changers. Like, it's like, because that's again very niche and specific. And then how do you? I mean, those again, that's very. I'm sure you're looking at you're reaching individuals and influencers and groups that are very, that they're, that's their agenda in that sense, right? So was it, how do you kind of like, I mean, aside from more of the kind of, what is the nitty gritty of kind of forming that campaign? What is the, the nuts and bolts of doing that?
Of deciding on that, like, release strategy?
Yeah. And then actually, like, choosing the right, I guess, like, you're basically reaching out to,
right. Yeah, so that was a strategic decision around how to, the goal with that film was definitely to get as many people to see it as possible, but to really reach beyond the choir, like the environmental and plant-based communities.
Right.
So there's going to be like a natural draw to wanting to watch a film about that subject matter. And certainly we want to be able to support those communities in gathering and enjoying the film together and talking about it. But we also wanted to bring in new communities and felt that like reaching out to fitness groups and engaging them in these group events really made the most sense, because that's kind of who the film was aimed at. And we also saw something that I thought was really interesting about Game Changers, and the goal of that film was they're hoping to help people better understand plant-based diets. And the fitness world is one way of doing that, so that was a strategic decision, from the get-go in making that film. And so in releasing it, they were kind of, taking that same approach of wanting to be really specific about the audience they're trying to reach, with the goal that eventually by reaching a new audience, it will continue to grow and be shared more widely.
I mean, I'm thinking more in the sense of, there's definitely a thread line, especially with your work with Tug, back in the day. And like you mentioned, like, having these like working with Fathom. I assume it's Fathom events, right? So, and Fathom events is like doing these special one night only type of like theatrical presentations. They work with, they're at Regal, AMC, across the country, right? So, and even like, you look at like Christian content in a way, like you look like is it the Chosen? I'm sure like there's those that like that, or also, or even repertory screenings, like they'll show like a 40th anniversary of the Goonies or something,
Right.
Can you talk about that in that sense of like these one night, working with Fathom and doing these one night events to kind of target like-minded audiences to really kind of build that interest, right? Because that's very much kind of like what Tug did in a way, right?
Yes. I'd say that like the kind of approach there is really engaging fan communities. Those are the communities that work best with the one night only events, or giving the audiences something that they can only see in the theater that night. So with Game Changers, I know that there was exclusive content that played after the film that was only available that one night in the theater. And so part of that strategy is, again, just like trying to get more new people watching this type of film that then can kind of be buzz builders for the film later on. Hopefully they see the film, they want to share it, and then they have the opportunity to do that before it's available on these other streaming platforms.
Right. So, so basically you're doing that in advance of like when it's eventually on iTunes or Amazon Prime and whatnot, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Laurel, like I want to talk about basically specifically, we showed your short film Gen Z Health, that you're the impact producer for that, but also you're like you're a recent college graduate, right? I mean, like just a couple years out, maybe, and like, can you talk about just basically when you're looking for jobs, you're like you said you Googled impact producer, right? So and is there like now? I mean, in impact producer roles like very new in the last, kind of like it's a recent thing, in grand scheme of things. Do you see like universities, or do you see program? You were in that Harvard program, so can you talk about that? Like it's like of like, is there like now kind of like a curriculum, or like just whatnot when it comes to impact producing, or similar roles like that?
I have not seen any schools teaching impact producing yet. The Harvard course that I took was public narrative. So it taught you how to tell your story of self, story of us, and story of now as it relates to whatever issue that you care about. And so that was really helpful in, I guess, just crafting my own story and like being able to tell that to audiences. But and I think it did kind of help in thinking about impact producing, just in like being able to relate to people by thinking about like, oh, values is what kind of connects us and will make people be motivated to take a certain action. But yeah, I haven't seen anything that's specifically for impact producers. I feel like when I got the job to work on I Am Greta, I was just learning from the team, and even the team I was working with, it was also their first time, but we were hired by Exposure Labs, which did Chasing Coral and the Social Dilemma. And so we got a lot of guidance from them. And yeah, every impact producing job is different based on, I see some questions in the chat about like, how do you like measure success? So I know for I Am Greta, from the very beginning, we had a theory of change. And so we looked at like, what is the ultimate impact that we want to make in the world with this film? And from that, we thought of like, okay, what are the outcomes and what are the indicators of success? And then from there, we could figure out what are the resources we have to make, what are the activities we have to have. So those things were like, we wanted to have a lot of like traction on our website that had a take action quiz. We wanted to create an intergenerational allyship conversations guide and a local action map. And so, you know, it really took us looking at the bigger picture first and then narrowing in on how we're actually going to do that in a tangible way and how we're going to measure that. And so I also see a question about like, yeah, how do we measure that? So we had a website with
don't worry, we're gonna post those questions in the next 10 minutes, so don't worry about that. It's like, yeah, keep it going.
So we had a take action quiz, for example, and so there was like questions about like, oh, what is your superpower? How much time can you commit to the movement? And it spit out a like personalized list of actions that you could take related to climate change. And so we were able to track how many clicks we got on that, as well as how many clicks we got on the local action map, and then also tracking like how many screenings we did, how many people watched it, and things like that.
Yeah, and I Am Greta, and that's a documentary on Greta Thunberg, right? The you know, then teenage kind of a climate change activist, right? And that's interesting. We did show that at HIF at the 2020 edition, but we showed it as we did a pop-up drive-in theaters, when we, the dark days, the beginning of the pandemic, right? So, I mean, this is maybe kind of a question for everyone. Do you think the impact producer role was more developed or more formalized in the way because of the pandemic? Because I mean, I feel like it's like just because of we're living isolated, watching stuff on our laptops or TV or what have you.
That's interesting. I think the methods might have morphed and changed, but I don't think that the job of an impact producer came from the pandemic. I think it's always, I mean, I was doing this, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I just didn't know what it was called. And I hadn't really, I've been impact producing since I made my first film in 2007. But I didn't realize that's what it was until, I don't know, 5 to 10 years ago when people started using the term. And then I had to realize this was, okay, there's a title for this now. But I think a lot of people have already been working on impact for a long time.
For sure. I think maybe more, maybe I could explain it. I think what I was trying to say is that, look, we brought up various projects you were all involved with, some with more resources. It could be like, from personnel to monetary resources to something that's very indie, like, is there I was talking about like, was there like, during the pandemic, was it formalized the impact producer role in the sense of like formulating some kind of like handbook? Is there a handbook, like that can be utilized, like that can be across the board when of any projects of all shapes and sizes?
I think there's best practices for sure. And I've taken a couple of courses, and I'm doing one more in June through UPenn, who has an executive for social impact certificate and a number of different social impact certificates.
Oh, I mean,
there's that.
Yeah.
I don't know of another, unless you guys do, of another program or certificate you can get specifically for impact producing, but there's a lot of I feel like there's a lot of information online. This might be hard to distill because there's so much out there, and because each project is so different.
Yeah, I think like there are some resources out there, like for instance, Doc Society has an impact field guide, which has been around for a long time. So that just furthers Leah's point that like this is a role that people have been playing for a while. I think it's more just that like more people know about it now, and there's a name to it. But yeah, that's a great resource. And then I think like it's also just really important to keep evolving and opening up space for new people to come into the field. Like I'm very excited to see this next generation of impact producers coming along. I've been so inspired watching Laurel and her teams and the new way that they're envisioning driving people to action. You know, they've experienced the world differently than a lot of I'll speak for myself, but me, you know, has been working in this field for a while, and there's so much uniqueness they can bring to this space. And so there are resources out there, and also we should continue lifting up other people and, you know, just making space for new ideas to come through.
Well, and then like not everybody has access to the same technology and the same, like you said, and the same resources. And depending where you are in the world, this is a totally different game.
Absolutely.
Depending on what country you live in, and how, you know, if you even have your basic needs and resources met to be able to think about impact. I mean, we're lucky to be in the space that we are, thinking about impact and creating these campaigns. But everybody has different resources and different circumstances. And maybe that gap is even getting bigger and bigger. So it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves.
Yeah, I mean, just being on this, virtual or online panel. Like this is the kind of a result of the pandemic, the lockdown, right?
Yeah,
Like, I mean, this is kind of the new normal in a sense, right? Like it's like having these panels, or even in Hollywood, you have these Hollywood movies they're going on the press tour. It's like everyone's zooming in, and whatnot. And like it's just even the aesthetic. You see when like the late night talk shows, like it was all on Zoom. Like Stephen Colbert is like basically in his like den or like his study, and like he's zooming in with like Ryan Gosling or something. But I think it's like in the sense that like this is just kind of like new normal in the sense that it's like accepted, now, right? I mean, it's talking about new technologies, right? So like, I mean, Laurel, I think you're Gen Zer, right? So like, it's like, but just maybe even, and everyone else, like, just how do you see, kind of the just social media or like the internet age? How's it? It's constantly evolving, like Tug is no longer around, but like you look at what Fathom Events is becoming, I mean, it's no different from like, how, like physical media is now a big thing now. Like, vinyls are big, like it's like tape deck, like in that sense of like, how do you make those connections in your campaigns as an impact producer with kind of like new platforms? Like, Facebook is maybe just outdated now for Gen Zers especially. Is it TikTok? Is it Fortnite? Like it's like, can you talk about kind of that? Like it's like, I'm just reading some crazy stuff that's happening, and like when it comes to like marketing and whatnot. So how does that work for like your projects in these new platforms?
Yeah, I know I'm currently directing a short documentary called Healing Lahaina, which will follow my family and some family friends about their experience with the Lahaina wildfire. Unfortunately, my grandparents lost their home in the fire, and some family friends lost relatives. And so it'll be a really personal look into what their life looks like 6 months later, as well as, talking about that day and what led up to it. And I know right now my team just started a TikTok account, and me and my producer are like, okay, I think that's necessary because of how many people are using TikTok and how things can easily go viral there. And so we are both not super well versed on TikTok, but we're trying to figure it out. We also use Instagram a lot, but I know for like I Am Greta, since we were trying to reach older generations and younger generations, we were still posting on Facebook. But I know, like, honestly, right now for Healing Lahaina, we haven't been posting on Facebook. We've been more on TikTok and Instagram. And so I think for that, as well as for the Gen Z mental health climate stories film, when you're talking about, adapting from COVID and like, I guess more people being okay with virtual screenings. We had an impact campaign. Unfortunately, we didn't get funding for it. And so it was smaller, but we were still able to have more than 70 community screenings in more than 15 countries. And it's like, before COVID, people probably wouldn't be willing to just, sit down and do a virtual screening. But now, because it's more okay, we are able to reach more people doing that.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's like even the metrics. Even if you, like, your film is picked up for, like, get bought by a streamer or whatnot, and the metrics are changing too. Like, you're looking at the streamers, they're very, they don't release their data essentially. So, and what are the metrics now, in a sense? Like, I mean, this is not I'm just throwing this as a dumb example, but, like, the horror film Megan, like, it's like it got it made a lot of money, but the campaign was because of the robot girl doing that Megan dance, right? So, like, that's a big hook, and that was shared, tens of thousands, maybe millions of times. How do you kind of navigate that? What are you thinking in making something that's kind of like goes, quote unquote, viral? I mean, am I using terminology that's old? I mean, I am. I guess I am, but they're all kind of connected in the same way. They're just the next kind of 2.0, 3.0 of those of what the viral is. So, does anyone comment on that?
Yeah, I think the most important thing, I think, is meeting your audience where they are and finding out what your audience is actually using. So just because we hear the word TikTok a lot doesn't mean that the audience for your film is actually using TikTok.
Right.
And same with Instagram, or also, with any other platform. Like, and if it's something new that you don't know about and you want to dip a toe in, interns and folks who are younger than all of us are great for that, and they're a great help and resource. And we always try and have people around as much as possible to teach us what we don't know. But I used to be really intimidated by all the new platforms and think, oh, we need a presence on all of these. But now I more feel that you need to focus on finding out where the audience is, what they're using, and go that direction. Spend your energy there versus spreading yourself so thin that you have maybe 200 followers on TikTok and 200 on Instagram and 100 on Facebook. And it's too much to manage, where you can really direct your efforts into the place that your audience is going. I think that's more important.
Okay. It's like, just in the sense of, like, it's weird. It's kind of like this, on opposite ends, we rely on kind of like current technology or platforms to get the word out. Especially, it's a word of mouth campaign, right? But but ultimately, we're looking at kind of the old school method, like Fathom events, the theatrical experience, festivals, bringing people together and watching these films. Which is, it's kind of like it's hard to make sense of it all, especially now. Like, how do you convert those into kind of those KPIs into conversion into, like, basically these clicks and those likes into actually.
I don't know, but wouldn't you? And this is for Laurel and Megan too. I'd be curious on your answer to this, but wouldn't you say that no matter what, at the end of the day, at least in the work that we're doing as impact producers, it still comes down to picking up a phone or a relationship and trust, and all three of those in some cases, no matter what, no matter how much technology you're using, how much you have to pivot, how much money you have. Like, at least for me, I'm really seeing that now, that at the end of the day, despite everything else, it comes down to trust and relationships. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, I think one thing that's coming to mind for me is, like, clicks and likes are a really easy way to track impact, but it doesn't necessarily equate to action past that. It doesn't necessarily equate to changing behavior or lifestyle. And so I think that, those are social platforms are really important to share content, to connect people. So many people live online these days, but at the same time, I think in the impact space, measuring impact should be probably more focused on like the deep impact that you're seeing. Where are you seeing change happen in communities or with individuals, and figuring out how those are things that you can track and share to inspire other people too. I say that, having worked on the social dilemma, and my current role is like focused on trying to re-envision how people come together in digital spaces. And so, I think that like it's complicated, and I don't know the answer, but I'm curious Laurel's thoughts also.
Yeah. Oh, I was kind of thinking about, I know I've heard the comparison of like, sometimes when I'm trying to describe what my job is, people don't get it, but I'll say the closest thing is like marketing, but marketing, usually you're trying to get like the most amount of people to come see your film, versus impact producing is like getting the right people to see your film. So I don't know, maybe like going viral doesn't necessarily matter for our field. It's just like maybe going viral in the right spaces.
Yeah, I mean, like, you have this like, you have parasocial relationships now. You have like performative kind of like quote unquote activism. I mean, armchair activism, you name it. Like, it's like, how do you convert that basically, and getting those audiences to actually, activate them, and really kind of like be up in to your projects, right? So, I mean, actually, one just really quickly, Lizette Marie Flannery posted a great comment here. She's a filmmaker, but also a film professor at the University of Hawaii. So she talks about the Impact Field Guide from Doc Society, and that's a great resource as well. And then and again, like, the Social Dilemma, that's a wild film. Like, everyone should see that film. It's crazy.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, great. So let's talk about, again, it's just like the opposite ends of like, you're using social media and these platforms to really get the, you can run a campaign from your bedroom essentially, right? But like, I'm talking about conversion activation. Like, Megan, you're working in these spaces as well, but you're also working at a basically a public space incubator. Can you talk about kind of that IRL in real life kind of connections that you kind of like want to provide that space for?
Yeah, well, it's online
connections
actually.
Okay, great.
But I mean, it's not, honestly, it's not dissimilar. Like, the goals of that project it's not dissimilar from what we're talking about with impact screenings. The project is a collaboration between 4 public service media broadcasters, and they're working together to re-envision how people can have public conversations on their platforms in healthy, productive ways. And, the way that we see public conversation, we see it as a way to move communities from seeing something and understanding something to sharing your opinions and perspectives about it to doing something about it. And that's kind of the same line that we're walking with impact screenings as well. And so, as communities are meeting in a lot of different places, and a lot of them are online. So it's important to be able to kind of think about how those can be more productive spaces. And with public service media broadcasters in particular, their mandate is to represent the perspectives of the public. And so if conversations are happening in private spaces, that gets harder and harder for them to do. And also a lot of films that we would consider social impact films end up on those platforms. So we want to make sure that there's a way for people to continue having conversations, even if it's not at a screening. Although I always support IRL screenings.
Right. Let's get some questions posted up on the screen. How about there's one from Kyla H. What was the UPenn certification class you mentioned?
Yes, the Center for Social Impact Strategy, CSIS. They have a number of different cool programs. Some are like you can do a accelerator, I think, over a weekend, or you can do a longer, like 6 to 8 month class. And not everybody in the program is a filmmaker. They're actually, a lot of folks are in the nonprofit world, or they're thinking about social impact in other ways. And so I think I was one of the only filmmakers in the last 2 programs, but there's more and more folks getting involved. So it was an awesome program. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Oh, any takeaways? Maybe you can talk about like, what you learned that really can help you in your filmmaking career.
I mean, Laurel mentioned the theory of change, and I was just going to echo that's, I mean, we spent months on creating theories of change, and even to know what that is and figuring out how to measure and evaluate impact is something that they focused a lot on. And it's just, I think what we do feels very isolating at times because we are running campaigns from our kitchen or bedroom or wherever. And so it's to be with other people who have similar like vision and passion for the impact space, I think is really powerful. And so a program like that, you're getting the book knowledge, but you're also getting this amazing group of humans who you can collaborate with, for forever down the road. So super valuable.
Let's post a question from Anna, who works at HIF. She's the director of programming. What are the metrics do you use to track impact and success for the campaigns?
Yeah, I think it's different for every campaign.
It's different for every campaign,
depending on what the goals are. But then again, there comes that theory of change. So if you can strategize at the beginning of the project, or even 5 different theories of change as you keep going, but that's really, really important to figure out what your actual goals are and how that dictates how you want to measure it.
Right.
Is that?
Yeah. Maybe Megan, you talked about like you were working on Chasing Coral, Social Dilemma, Game Changers. They all had kind of their own different release strategies, right? So, you had like films that were bought by Netflix. So it's like, it's kind of like it's there in perpetuity, right? And versus like Game Changers, where they wanted to do their own self-release. What are the kind of metrics for success for those 2 campaigns, in your opinion?
I think the number one goal for all of those films was try to get as many people to see it as possible. Okay. And then I think there was like a secondary goal and a third goal after that. It's like, how can we create more climate champions through these screenings? How can we create more action campaigns happening on a local level?
Right.
So I would say like one of the most important things for impact tracking is actually like providing pathways for people to share their stories back with you so that you have a sense of how people are using the film. And of course, like doing that in a way where they're aware that you're okay with you sharing their story. But, that I think is where you get more to the deep impact. The number of screenings is important. It just is like, it will always be important. But from there, I think you can also think about like, where do personal stories come into play? Because that's like the starting point for this to begin with, is like storytelling. And so finding a way to kind of like tie that all together, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think maybe more in the sense of like Chasing Coral, bought by Netflix, and then it lives on Netflix. So great, like the metrics are, it's not necessarily like, it's gonna, you're basically selling tickets to, it's all about box office success, right? Versus like the Game Changers, where they're self-releasing it, so it's not on Netflix per se. They're going to be on more of a video on demand, kind of. They're going to be on all the, from transactional to streaming to rental and all that stuff, to purchasing the digital download. So it's in that sense, like, maybe for, I guess, Chasing Coral, I guess, the pie in the sky thing is to get it. It's in very simplistic terms, get it bought by Netflix. Great, it's like. How do you? That's just I'm just saying it very generally, just as an example. And then, but especially in documentaries, like there's so much content that gets left on the cutting room floor, and maybe in the sense of like, I mean, and there's also many different lives for the film when it comes to the educational distribution, like building, like having like the various handbooks, for call to actions, like maybe ancillary material that you can have that wasn't part of the film, but maybe extensions of kind of the, the themes of the film. Um, Maybe for image, just to, it's easy to wrap my head around. Like for Chasing Coral, is there like, was there, an educational window? Was there materials for those kind of different windows aside from just the film itself on Netflix?
Yeah, so actually the interesting thing about doing the campaign with Netflix as a distributor was that in order for anyone to host a community screening, it had to qualify as an educational screening. So people had to, agree to incorporate some sort of educational element to the screening. Yeah. Right. And then separately, Netflix does have opportunities for schools to share their films. Chasing Coral at one point was added to YouTube, actually, so that like the paywall was removed for a certain period of time. But it was a different scenario than I think most films are in, where like educational screening licenses are a really like big revenue stream for a lot of independent films. So I wonder if maybe Leah or Laurel might have more to speak to on that front.
Education is huge. I mean, it was a big revenue stream for the last feature that I did, and will be for one that I'm working on now. I don't know. I mean, the license fees have changed so much too. But with all of the projects I work on, I'm passionate about education and bringing films and content and conversations into classrooms. And so that's always a huge priority for me. And now I'm trying to figure out the best way to monetize that
right
at the same time. But you mentioned sharing stories, and we use testimonials a lot to measure impact. Student surveys, educator surveys, and testimonials and photos of people using our interactive elements and things like that. And then I just saw on here, I am working on a narrative. Somebody had asked if this is just for documentaries, and I think it's important to note that.
Let's post that question up there from written.
Yeah, if you, I'm working on a narrative now as an impact producer. It's a short narrative called The Fast Runner. It's a Holocaust-themed film, but I have experience in that genre, I guess, for documentaries. And so there's a ton of crossover, and I get to kind of use a lot of what I've done with documentaries and Holocaust education and apply that now to a narrative. So yes, I think you can have an impact producer for any kind of project, really. But I don't think that all projects need an impact producer, and I don't believe that all projects are social impact projects. So it would be easy to get, drawn into that, but maybe you don't. I mean, not every project that I'm involved with really is aiming to make a huge impact in the world. Sometimes you just have a beautiful project or a story that needs to be seen, and you're on to the next one, and you're not really, passionate about measuring the impact or making an impact in the world. And I think that's just fine. So it really is unique to each one.
I mean, there's so many monetary streams when it comes to distribution.
Yeah.
I mean, I think especially the educational market is I think not well known or not thought of very much. I mean, you can go on the university circuit, for example, and get honorariums, and just be there to be part of the film, and also a lecture as well, right? So so I think it's just from your experiences, how do you kind of navigate the education window, or for your films, or have you?
Go, Megan. Do you want to speak to that first? Are you doing? I don't know. I imagine Laurel's done education for.
Yeah, that's what we did for Gen Z mental health climate stories. We did educational screenings, and so we had a fee of a couple $100 that people would pay And that was, since Gen Z mental health didn't get distribution, that was the main way that we did get money. But it was also cool because we got speakers from who are subjects in the film, all Gen Zers, to be on panels for a lot of these screenings. And we also required them to get paid as well. And so I think that was also cool to just give more opportunities to Gen Zers to talk about their experience too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying from very simplistic terms, like there are various different rates when it comes to different windows,
and you can have a distributor or not have an educational distributor, or you can, do a non-exclusive education, which is what I always recommend anyway, because I love, God bless them, but there's nobody who's gonna, no distributor is gonna care about your film as much as you care about your film, and they've got many, many films to deal with. So I think it's always a smart idea to keep non-exclusive education if you can, because there is money to be made there if you know what you're doing and you know how to hustle, and you can put something really compelling together. So then there's cool companies now that'll help you create educational resources, and great mentors and advisors you can work with. And I don't know, for me, that's always one of the most rewarding parts is working on the educational components around all of the films.
We got a couple more questions here. Just want to post them up before we end the panel. From Slant Film Festival, if you're interested in becoming an impact producer, how do you get started? And that's more, as an impact producer becomes more prominent, I
think you just call yourself an impact producer. I think that's what we're all doing.
Yeah, I mean, let's mention the handbook from the Doc Society. You went through the UPenn program. Laurel, you went through that Harvard certificate program as well. I mean, any other suggestions?
I would say keep an eye out for, where there are films that are looking for people to join their campaigns that relate to what you're doing or care about already. I don't think that you have to be have a film background to be an impact producer. I actually think there are some projects where it works even more to their advantage to have someone who's deeply rooted in the community you're trying to reach. So I think just having a sense of if there are any projects that are happening around you, don't be afraid to reach out. And I mean, Laurel, I think, at the beginning of the panel was talking about just cold calling people, and people are really, I think, very open to sharing what they know. And the space, everybody's wanting to help bring social issues to the forefront. So ideally people will be willing to talk to you about their experience and help you if they can. But I wonder, Laura, if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, especially when you're younger in college, you feel nervous about reaching out to just complete strangers, and you're like, why would they waste time talking to me? But if you come with a genuine curiosity about their experience, and I really went into those calls with people just wanting advice, and then ended up, a lot of them would send me job opportunities or resources, and or connecting me with other friends of theirs or impact producers.
Well, you knew I was going to be at HIF, and so you reached out to me, but it turns out, and so we met at HIF, but then it turns out you've actually worked with another impact producer who I just worked with on my last project. So it's a small world.
It's a very small world, which I enjoy.
We talked about, it's so funny, there's a comment there, I'm saying and you know too much, so sorry. But anyway,
check yourself.
I'm very self-conscious right now.
It's hard. You have a hard job.
Thank you, Nandet. That being said, we talked about several films and the impact producer role for films that were completed. So, and Laurel, you worked on, Gen Z, you worked on the Climate Summit. You're in production right now for your film. And can you talk about having from that mindset of the strategy of the impact producer from the very beginning, from the infancy of the project? Can you just talk about your film that you're currently working on, Healing Lahaina, and how you are crafting the impact producer role to, use that to its fullest?
Yeah, so normally, at least in projects I've been involved in before, the impact producer always comes in later. And so they don't have any say in the actual film. But since I already have a background in impact producing, me and my producer for Healing Lahaina have been already thinking about like what is the impact that we want to actually make with this film. And we started thinking about that before we even went into production. And so we applied to a Doc Society Climate Story Fund grant. And so we actually were asked to think through all of those things about like what an impact campaign would look like. And so we decided our three impact pillars would be around supporting the survivors of the Lahaina wildfire, reducing the stigma around mental health and disasters, and encouraging climate resilience. And so from those three impact pillars, that's kind of how we decided like, okay, now for climate resilience, we want to do that in the form of disaster preparedness. And so we, reached out to a woman who runs youth disaster preparedness trainings, and we filmed that. And then also in thinking about who I'm going to interview, I tried to find people who could talk about climate change, as well as how people in Lahaina are coping mental health wise and struggles there. And I think it was really great. I came back from Maui and shooting last week, and I had two family friends that are men talking about mental health and seeking therapy, and I was just thinking like this is so powerful. I think because that's not the normal demographic you would see talking about mental health. So yeah.
The crowdfunding. You are in production, but also crowdfunding through your Seed and Spark campaign. How is Impact Producing complementing that campaign right now? And also, Leah, that also applies to you because you are also crowdfunding using HIF as a fiscal sponsor, right? So for Uncle Bully. So maybe Laurel, you can. Oh, actually, Laurel, why don't you talk about?
Yeah, I think
campaign?
We have a video where I'm talking about the impact pillars, and we posted that on Instagram so that people know like that this is what the focus of the film is going to be. And so I think knowing that, like just having conversations with other people in the film world, they were saying like, oh, that's super useful for us to know in terms of like if they're going to send the Seed and Spark campaign to other people who might be interested. And just like also knowing how to use social media from impact producing, that's been helping in this stage as well.
Leah?
Well, I want to tell everybody that they need to donate to Laurel's campaign because she only has like 4 days left, and she's at 70-something%. So if everybody on this call were to give just a little bit, I bet she would meet her goal. And then today would be a huge success. So I think you put the link on the screen, but wouldn't that be awesome if we could fund it right now and then Laurel could finally get some sleep? I think, I've used in the last 10 years, I've used 5 or 6 different crowdfunding platforms. I'd say 75% of the campaigns were successful. I mean, this is a whole other conversation. I consult with other filmmakers on how to strategize for a successful campaign, and there's so much work. But we're fortunate that we have HIF as a fiscal sponsor for Uncle Bully's Surf School. We're also using GoFundMe. So if you want a tax deduction, you can donate through HIF. And if you don't need a tax deduction, you can use GoFundMe. And so all of that is on our website. I'd say that crowdfunding is, I think we all do it. It's a love-hate relationship. It's a necessary evil. If you don't have to do it, we wouldn't do it. But no matter what, crowdfunding really does bring your audience together. It brings new people in. It creates super fans. It creates people who are with you for the duration of the project. And I mean, we still have people supporting us that we met on our very first crowdfunding campaign for a film that we made in Africa. So it just never ends. You're always building your community and your relationships, and that's a huge part of impact producing as well. So as much as I have a love-hate with crowdfunding, at the end of the day, again, like, it brings great people into your tribe. So
Great.
yeah.
I'm going to post one more question from Juan Fu. I know Juan. He's a producer based in Singapore. He's got what are some additional values / skills that need to be taught to producing students under this impact umbrella?
How to deal with rejection. No. Thick skin. I don't know. I mean, Megan, what would you say?
I think, well, personally, my favorite part of working in impact producing is I don't know that everybody would say this, but like, I love logistics and project management. So like, I personally feel like that's the best thing that I can bring to a project. It's not necessarily relationship building, partnership building. Those things are hugely important, but I know that like my skill sets I'm really good at project management and thinking about organization. So I guess I would say, like, think about what you're good at and how does that fit in, because there are needs for everything on every campaign. Some people are really great at communications or developing social tools. It really can vary. So tap into what you love and are good at already.
I think that's a cool thing about impact producing too, is that there's so many things under the umbrella. There's so many different skill sets, and that's really cool that you can plug in. You could go to somebody and say, hey, here's what I'm really good at. Do you need this kind of help? I mean, research is something that's huge. If you're good at research, if you like spending all day at a computer, I mean, that's you can pick up a phone. If you can have a conversation with someone and you're great at sales that way, that's awesome. But if you're a kind person and you can find some compassion and empathy and have understanding for what other people are going through, I think that's, to me, and the kinds of projects that I work on, that is probably towards the top of the list. It takes good listening skills and willing to be kind and compassionate. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, ultimately, the great and late Roger Ebert said that cinema is the great empathy machine, right? Film
Absolutely.
machine. Yeah. That's my love language. Also, pivot tables and databases are my love language. But that being said, I think we're going to close for this panel. Finally, for every panelist, what are you working on next? What do you want to promote?
Laurel?
I think I already said mine, which is the Healing Line Seed and Spark campaign. I've been blown away by all the support that we've gotten already. We have more than 100 supporters, and I'm so grateful for all of them. And
I want to see you finish this campaign today, Laurel. It's time.
You're at 74%, right? For your
76%.
She was at the beginning of the panel. I don't know where it is now.
Oh,
but
we'll see.
We'll find out. I would love for people to visit our website and check out Uncle Bully's Surf School. So if you go to inflatablefilm.com, or if you follow us at Inflatable Film on Instagram, we've got a couple different projects in the works. We're working on another feature doc called One Grand about a luthier up in Kula, a man who makes guitars and ukuleles, and just made his 1,000th instrument right before COVID shut the world down. And yeah, some other cool stuff happening. So check us out there. Thank you.
Megan?
Cool. I would say check out newpublic.org. That is where I'm at these days, and I'm working on the Public Spaces Incubator project. If you're in public service media, you might find that particularly interesting.
Great. I want to thank everyone. Thank you, Megan, Leah, Laurel, for joining us.
Thank you all.
This has been a very fun conversation. I hope the audience got a lot of takeaways from it. And yeah, it's just impact producing it's always been there, but as a classified as a an actual role position is I believe it's just a recent thing. So and we've showed a lot of your films at HIF, and they've gone on to
Yeah,
great
thank you.
success, and I wish you all the success. And again, thank you for joining us. And thank you, audience, for joining us and being a part and supporting the Hawaii International Film Festival. We have these quarterly events under our industry pillar called HIFILM, and we're doing these free panels every quarter. But we also have an industry component as part of our fall festival, the 44th edition of HIF, presented by Holly Kalani, which is going to be in October. But we also have year-round events. Next week we just finished the spring showcase, but next week we kick off our first edition of the HIF Appeal Fest, our youth festival, at the Kasali Kahala Theaters, April 5th to the 7th. We also have a monthly screening series at Kahala where we show sneak peeks of new films called HIF Selects, and that's a membership level, and it's great value. And memberships help support and sustain the festival as an organization. We also have great fun stuff like summer flicks at the Waikiki Prince Hotel. We have these free screenings throughout the summer. It's going to be kicking off in late May through every Wednesday through midsummer to the end of July, where we show these fun films outdoors at the Waikiki Prince. And again, also want to just give you mark your calendars for the 44th annual HIF, which is going to be in October. So we're going to be on Oahu. We're also going to have a west side footprint. We're also going to be on the other islands, Maui, Kauai, the Big Island, and other islands as well. And how do you find about all this information? Go to our website, hif.org, HIFF.org. So again, thank you very much to our panelists, and mahalo, and we'll see you soon.
Thank
Aloha,
you.
everyone.